during our silent sit. We're getting ourselves out of the way and we're letting God act in us at a deeper level beyond words, thoughts, images. But I think of it as a reverse prayer. So if you practice this type of practice for a long time, day after day, month after month, year after year, it's really true freedom. You're releasing thoughts God doesn't want you to carry. Try it for 30 days. Make it the first thing you do in the morning before you do anything else.
Hey, Ryder, before we dive into today's episode, I have a question for you. How long has that book been sitting on your heart? If you're tired of thinking about it and are ready to actually make progress, join me the last Sunday of every month for my live writing masterclass. Now, this isn't just another class. It's an interactive space where you finally gain clarity on your book, break through those mental mindset blocks, and get the roadmap to actually start writing. The bonus, when you register, you get a free after session call with me. Welcome to 30 Minutes of Power, the podcast that uplifts, empowers, and equips you to walk boldly in your faith and purpose. I'm your host, Jori O'Neale, and today we're leaning into the stillness where transformation truly begins. I'm joined today by Rich Lewis, author of Sitting with God, A Journey to Your True Self Through Centering Prayer. He's a teacher, coach, and contemplative. I don't like this word at all, but it's okay. He's a guide who's been practicing centering prayer since 2014. So he knows what he's talking about. Let's take a breath and dive in. Rich, welcome so much to the show. Thanks for coming, buddy.
Great. Thanks for having me on. I love your energy. So I think you were trying to say contemplative, maybe?
Maybe,
That's okay.
Leaders are readers, and sometimes my brain is like, those words collectively, what letters? Such a fabulous phrase. So many syllables. Love it. Contemplative. Yes, that sounds like a fun word. You don't hear that word every day.
No, you don't actually. You don't. And I probably don't even say it that often. So that's probably why. You're like, what is this word?
Well, we're going to use some context clues, but I want to start from the beginning. This idea of centering prayer. So you're an author, and usually people write books about things that they're really passionate about. They have a lot of experience and expertise in. I want to start off by just identifying and outlining what is centering prayer, right? First question. And then the second part of that, and how does that differ from meditation?
Sure.
I'm sure you get this question often because.
So centering, and when I answer that, it'll kind of answer the second question too, because centering prayer. Well, actually, the short history is it's been around for about 50 years. So it was actually created in the early 1970s by three Trappist monks, so three Catholic priests saw other forms of meditation out there, and they wanted something more for the Christian community. And one of them, Father William Meninger, was reading an old classic book called The Cloud of Unknowing. And as he read this book, a method of silent sitting in prayer with God seemed to jump off the pages. And he began talking with the other monks about this practice. So first, it's been around for about 50 years. Obviously, the idea of sitting in silence with God has been around for thousands of years. And Jesus sat quietly with God. We don't think he always babbled. We think he also just sat with God. So Jesus probably did some type of silent prayer, maybe centering prayer, or who knows. But so it's a 50-year-old practice, and it is considered meditation, but it's also considered deepening your relationship with God. So we believe that centering prayer practitioners believe during centering prayer, we're opening to the presence and actions of the divine, of the Holy Spirit of God within us during our silent sit. We're getting ourselves out of the way and we're letting God act in us at a deeper level beyond words, thoughts, images. I think of it as and I can explain how you do it, but I think of it as a reverse prayer. God's praying in me during this time what God knows I need. Could be even just for that day as I get up from my silent sit. God's praying in me what God knows I need to do what I need to do and get through the day. So that's a quick history of how old the practice is, and that it is meditation. But then it's really more than that. It's really sitting with God and opening to God and letting God act in us at a deeper level behind our thoughts.
I love that. And so what first drew you to this practice of centering prayer? Because You've been doing this since 2014. So what led to this discovery?
Sure. Prior to that, I had read books by a gentleman by the name of Carl McColman, and he talked a lot about silence and the power of silence. So at that time, I would just sit, and I found it hard and brutal, and I didn't know what I was doing. I thought, okay, I'm going to just sit here. Something powerful is going to happen. And it was painful and brutal, but I kind of persisted. But then I came across a book in the I guess it was the fourth quarter of 2013 by Amos Smith called Healing the Divide, Recovering Christianity's Mystic Roots. And in this book, he talked about a practice called centering prayer that he had been doing even for like 20 years up until that point. And that immediately intrigued me. I thought, oh, maybe if I try this practice, it'll make it easier. So I began trying to practice for myself. I also reached out to him, and we began a back and forth email dialogue on his website, and we became friends. And actually, he was the it's his fault that I wrote my book. He actually nudged me to write the book, and served as a nice mentor. And to this day, we're friends. He's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, and I actually spoke to him about last weekend, actually. So we speak once a month or so, and still keep up with each other. But I wouldn't say I stumbled into it. I think God pointed me to Amazon and this book. And as I started reading the book, centering prayer popped out of the pages, and I reached out to Amos, tried to practice for myself, more importantly, and it made sitting in silence much easier for me, and it worked. And I've continued to practice, since since then, over 10 years at this point.
So in your book, you mentioned that you started with just 1 minute of silence, that it started with 1 minute. And so what was that initially like? You said it was hard before to sit in silence. So what was the thing that like kind of did it for you that now, right, a decade later, this has become a daily spiritual discipline?
Sure. So prior to centering prayer, I didn't know what I was doing. So I had thoughts, a lot of thoughts of things I was doing before the sit, things I'm going to have to do after the sit, just racing thoughts that go on in the mind. Whereas centering prayer is a practice that helps you sit in the silence. And so centering prayer, you sit comfortably with your eyes closed, and then to begin your centering prayer sit interiorly, you introduce what we call a sacred word of one or two syllables. Could be God, Jesus, a color, beach, and that signifies you're beginning your sit and opening to the presence and actions of God within. And then as you're sitting there in silence, when you engage your thoughts, which means when you begin thinking about what the errands I'm going to do after my sit, or things that are on your mind and bothering you, you reintroduce this word to come back to the present moment, to come back to God, and you let go of these engaged thoughts. And then you let go of the word. And you do that really whenever needed. So you don't do it as a mantra. You do it when needed. Sometimes you catch yourself and you don't even need it. But I guess it helped me sit in the silence, and it helped me keep returning to the silence. So it just resonated with me. And I actually then switched from a word to an image. I actually think of a Jesus icon. I'm more of a visual person than an auditory person. So I switched it from a word to an image. And I sort of just think of this Jesus icon. I don't paint it perfectly, but I think of it, and that returns me to the moment. Some people use their breath. And then Amos he actually keeps his eyes open and just stares at a spot on the ground to keep himself focused in the present moment. So you can use whatever sacred method works for you: word, image, breath, or just staring at a spot to keep yourself in the current moment.
So let's talk about your book. Sitting with God. Why did you feel the need to write this? There's so many books on prayer and the divine and even mysticism and stoicism. Like, what message did you feel compelled to share that caused you to write this book?
Well, as I said, it was Amos's fault. He asked me. I guess he had written that book, and he was writing another book, and he just thought, and he's not a pastor now, but he was a pastor at the present time in the United Church of Christ. But he just thought, he asked me to write the book. He said, you go into an office every day, you're an everyday normal person, and you can share how centering prayer has helped you. You can share more about what he calls the Jesus paradox in his book, where Jesus, what does it mean that Jesus is God and human at once? So he initially challenged me to write a book to share my experiences with both centering prayer and the Jesus paradox. So he challenged me to just write some single sentence statements. And then I came back to him with that. And then he said, "There's the chapters of your book, go write." And so I thought, well, you're crazy. In my mind, I'm thinking he's crazy. So I picked one of them. It took, I think, 2 weeks or so, wrote one chapter, emailed it to him, and figured he'd read it and look at it and say, "This is awful. And I don't know why I recommended he do this." But instead, he said, "This is really neat. You got something fresh here. You need to continue." And then it kind of made me realize maybe I should continue. And I talked to my wife and said, "What do you think?" And she said, "Do it." My wife's an entrepreneur anyhow. So, of course, she said, "Do it." So off I went and began writing it on Saturday, mostly Saturday mornings at the local Starbucks. I didn't want to take time away from the family. So I wrote it from about 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the morning at the local Starbucks while everyone was sleeping on a Saturday morning. So I guess I really just wanted to share. I took Amos up on his challenge, but I really just wanted to share my everyday journey into how I began the practice, why it's resonated with me, how it's helped me, how it can help people, and then how it can help people that are either new to the idea of it or how it can help existing practitioners. And then I just talked about, who is your true self in there, and that we're connecting to this person during centering prayer, then getting up from our sits and walking with God and this true self person. And then I talked a little bit about Jesus in the book too, because I think of it as I'm silently sitting with Jesus, and then I'm getting up and walking with Jesus. So that's kind of how the book came about, and then some of the things that went into the book.
So you use this beautiful phrase in your book. You said that centering prayer doesn't replace other forms of prayer, that it complements it. Can you speak more to that harmony of centering prayer and just, I guess, what we consider as our more common form of prayer? Where is the harmony in that? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And I guess I didn't want people to think once they start centering prayer or try it, then that's it. And they've found it and you can stop. So I wanted to encourage people to continue your existing forms of prayer. Just add this type of prayer and see how it complements it, and see how it might even deepen your prayer life. And I haven't eliminated other forms of prayer. I silently sit with God, but I verbally, thank God, gratitude, or ask God for help, or pray for myself or my family or friends or even world events. So I continue to practice different ways of verbal prayer. And I just wanted people to know that this doesn't mean this is it. This is the gold star or whatever, and you can stop all your other methods of prayer. I just wanted to say, add it to your existing prayers and see what happens to your relationship with God.
So you coach people in learning and growing deeper into this form of practice, this centered prayer. What are some of the maybe the common fears or misconceptions that people bring with them into engaging in centering prayer in the beginning?
And I'll answer that in well, first I'll say I've coached three different types of people. Either people that are brand new to the idea of this and they want someone to help them establish a centering prayer practice. The second type of person is someone that's already been practicing, but they think maybe I'm just scratching that. I haven't hit the depths of this. I'm just at the surface. I'm not going deep. I'm not really connecting to my true self. Am I really doing what God wants me to do? Am I searching the depths of this prayer in my relationship with God? And then the third type of person I've coached priests and pastors that have contacted me to say, they know they need this type of prayer so they can better service their church or their congregation, and that they're going to burn out if they don't do this type of prayer. So it's neat to see when I look back, it's kind of those three type of people and the different challenges it brings. So obviously for the pastors, priests, they're worried they're going to burn out and then they're going to be of no use to their congregations or churches. So I help them. I hold them accountable in a nice way. I remember one of the priests. I remember I said, if it's all right with you, I'm going to text you. I'm going to remind you. You need to do these silent sits. So they knew how to do them. They just weren't doing them. So I was making sure they did them and was holding them accountable. So that's what they needed. And then obviously someone new to the idea of it, sitting with your thoughts can be scary. So when you sit and you're silent, all of a sudden thoughts come up that you knew you had. And a lot of people just keep themselves busy so that they don't have to do these thoughts. Or repressed thoughts come up. All of a sudden, you don't know why you suddenly start crying or something like that. So some of that are for new people are some challenges they face. Or sitting in the silence brings up thoughts. Sitting in silence brings up thoughts they didn't know they had, and they have to just know that it's okay and that it's a healthy process because you're releasing these thoughts, and God doesn't want us to carry all this emotional baggage with us. A lot of people, including myself, even, we think this doesn't have to be your normal. So if you practice this type of practice for a long time, day after day, month after month, year after year, it's really true freedom. You're releasing thoughts God doesn't want you to carry. You're releasing stress in your body. You're releasing repressed thoughts. And it's really so freeing. So the normal that you thought was normal doesn't have to be your normal in the way you can walk around in this world. So for newer people, some of those challenges. And then obviously for people that have been practicing for a while, they just need more of a guide to really ask them deeper questions. What do you feel? So you sit with God, but now outside of your practice, what do you feel really called to do? What are some things that you're not taking action on because you're afraid? You don't have confidence, or you think you're the wrong person for that. You don't have the right skill set. You're too old to try that. You're too young to try that. And just talking with people with what do you really feel God is calling you to do, and why haven't you started moving on it?
So let's talk about this fourth person, because when you were mentioning
Okay.
initially, because I know them, I talk to them, they email me, they're in my DMs. I practice, it's not meditation, but I practice stillness, sitting with God. I do visualization exercises where I see Jesus and I see myself with Jesus, and we're sitting and we're just sitting and there's nothing happening. There's no movement, there's no talking. We're just sitting.
Nice.
And as you said, a lot of the fears, the concerns, like they dissipate, like they absolutely go away. And in some instances, like I physically give them over to Jesus. They are not mine to carry. They were never meant for me to be solving or try to resolve. Like they are his burdens, right? He says, come to me, all you are heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon me and learn from me. I am meek and humble at heart, right? So I'm giving my cares and concerns. And when I share this on like previous episodes of my podcast, I get people blowing up my chat like, I can't sit still. My mind won't be quiet. Like, what do you say to that?
I guess what I'll say is you have to find the practice that works for you. So like centering prayer worked for me. And I've coached some people and we're talking about centering prayer, and then it doesn't work for them. They needed a mantra based practice because that kept them in the present moment where they repeatedly said something to them. And even centering prayer practitioners, I've helped help their practice become easier by saying, well, what is your sacred word? Have you thought of an image? Have you thought of using your breath? So even switching the method from a word to breath, or from breath to an image, all of a sudden changes it. Or even changing the word itself can change it. Now, and you're not focusing on the word, but just that word can still change it. So I guess what I say is there's a lot of different practices, and your practice sounds terrific. I encourage people, and I want to help find the practice that works for them, that makes sitting in stillness a little bit easier. And sometimes, but then also sometimes just showing up is really all we need to do. Each sit, some are easier, some are harder, and that's okay. It doesn't mean God has not acted in you, and it does not mean that was a powerful sit. Those are just your thoughts on top of God underneath the thoughts. So each sit can be different. Some are easier, some are harder, some are in the middle. But I guess find a practice that works for you and then just show up and don't judge your sit. Just show up. And even if you miss it, forgive yourself. God will patiently wait for you to show up the next day at the next sit.
I love that last part because I think that's a large part of what it is self-judgment, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't look like or sound like, or because we can't accomplish it or do it the way this other person is doing it. Which is why I kind of like you have multiple entry points, right, for centered prayer. It's not the one way, it's whatever way works for you to connect best with God. So I love the flexibility that there lies in. I'm a practical gal, so share with me in any way you can. First thing that comes to mind, how has centering prayer impacted the way that you show up in your everyday life, right? As a husband, as a father, as a friend.
I would say I'm just much more present and willing to listen to people, give them the space they deserve without even rendering an opinion. I'm just present and listening because a lot of times that's all that person wants. They just want to know you're there, you're listening to them. They don't need your solution, they don't need your answer, they don't need your recommendation. They just need to know that you're there for them. Um, Even if if they're talking about some situation, they're not necessarily saying, "What do I do?" They just want to know that Rich is there to listen and is a good friend or a good husband or a good father. So it's given me a better ability just to be present for people and just listen without reacting and thinking I know what I need to do and I know how I can help them. That's not necessarily what they're looking for.
So this is a perfect segue into your website, Silence Teacher, right? And so I think it's a fitting title for what you just described that you help people with and that you do. So what have some profound moments that silence has taught you or that you've helped other people uncover?
Sure. So the website, silenceteaches.com, and I love the name, and I'm so glad it was available at the time when I created my website. I think my website was 2015 or 2016. But I guess silence teaches. I mean, and which is so cool. So it's if I look at pre-centering prayer and then post-centering prayer, I'm a much more calm person, or better able to quickly calm myself down. I'm a more confident person. I'm more willing to get out of my comfort zone and try and do new things that even though they scare me, which is a lot of things I'm doing since I started centering prayer. None of this was on the radar. The website was not on the radar. The coaching, the going on podcasts, the writing the book, none of that was on the radar. But here it is. And so I'm just kind of listening to so it's taught me to go within and outside of centering prayer, journal and think about what is God praying in me and what's next and what do I need to do and who is my true self. And it's not an end point, it's a journey. So that's the neat part about it is there's not I haven't arrived. I'm on a journey and I'm just sitting with God and then I'm walking with God. And I think a lot of people that I coach kind of will say the same thing. They're going within and discovering their true self and then taking action on this true self. And that like I said, it's not an endpoint. It's a journey. What is God calling me to do now? And then in a year, it could be something a little bit maybe the same and more advanced, or it could be completely different. But it's an inner journey and then a walk with God on your true self journey. I think of it as.
So someone stumbles upon this podcast episode and they're listening and they're like, this centered prayer sounds marvelous, sounds lovely. What's the simplest first step?
I would say make it, if you want, try it for 30 days. Make it the first thing you do in the morning before you do anything else. And just commit to 1 to 5 minutes. That way you're not overdoing it. You don't need to jump to 20 minutes. So try it for 30 days. Make it the first thing you do in the morning and try it for 1 to 5 minutes. And then after that 30-day period, look back and see how did it go and kind of reflect on it. And then hopefully if it resonated with you, then continue it and then just increase the time, to 10 minutes and 15 minutes. And then eventually add a second sit. I do 2 sits a day because the first sit starts my day, and then the second sit helps me finish the day just as strongly as I started the day. And many people say, I don't have time to do a second sit. And I'll argue it gives you back time, but you won't know that till you try it for yourself. So if I didn't take that second sit, my second day is not going to go as well. And I just know that from experience, but you have to try it for yourself to really believe it. So sitting with God has given me time back and helped me be more productive from the beginning to the end of the day, because the letting go I do in centering prayer, you kind of do the same thing outside of centering prayer. I let go of what I don't need to focus on and can hone in and focus on what I do need to. So that's what I would do, is challenge someone to just start with baby steps first thing in the morning, 5 minutes, and try it for 30 days.
I love that. Listen, Rich, before we wrap, how can listeners connect closer with your work?
Best that place to find me is silenceteaches.com. If they subscribe, they'll get a free ebook on centering prayer, and then they can try it for themselves. And then if they're further intrigued, my book is on my website. They can check out my book. But the best place is just to follow me, or just to subscribe to silenceteaches.com. They'll get my weekly meditation. And I also now have a weekly newsletter where I try to provide valuable information to help people. But silenceteaches.com is where they can find me. And if they reach out to me, I love to correspond with people. So I'll email back, and then we'll have a friendly back and forth, or we might even land on a Zoom call. Like when my book came out, it was really cool. A monk in the Netherlands reached out to me and wanted to chat with me. So we had a Zoom call, back in 2020 when the book came out. And that was just a neat experience. So maybe they'll even land on a Zoom call with me.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for being here and sharing this sacred space with us. And to everyone listening, remember, transformation often begins in the quiet. Don't be afraid of the stillness, because that's what draws you closer to God. As always, people, Jori O'Neale, 30 minutes of power. Be an empowered person using your power to empower others. Till next time. Peace. All right, now real quick, I want to talk to my aspiring authors here today. If you've ever said, I want to write a book, but I don't know where to start, then listen up. I'm hosting a live writing masterclass this Sunday, and this is your opportunity to stop waiting and start writing. In this session, we're going to map out your book and get crystal clear on your specific message. You're going to take the first step toward making your book a reality. So if you're ready to invest in your dream and finally take action, then head over to jorioneale.com/your_story_matters. Click the link below in the show notes, and I'll see you inside. Thanks for tuning in to 30 Minutes of Power. We hope today's episode inspired you to take action and make a positive change in your life. Remember, your power is meant to empower others. So share this episode with someone who needs encouragement today. We'd love to hear from you, so connect with us on Instagram at 30 Minutes of Power, or email us at azironsharpensiron@gmail.com. Until next time, stay empowered and keep empowering others.
30 minutes of power.